but we are thankful that we can still share this word. And most importantly, in such a time like this, we believe that it is very important for us to look into our heart and check our spiritual life. Am I on the right path of living the spiritual life? Am I believing in the word in the right way? Can I really go to heaven? Am I really in Jesus? I think it is very important for us to think about those things in our heart in such a time like this. During the time of Noah, Noah has been telling the people that God is going to judge this world. However, many people, they did not believe in his words. They thought that it was a joke. Hey, the weather is so beautiful and so nice like this. What do you mean there's going to be a flood? I think you're out of your mind. And by the way, why are you making the ship in the middle of the mountain? That's a nonsense. And so they began to mock Noah, and they did not believe in the word of Noah. However, in the time that they did not know, God has given them the flood, and all of them, they were destroyed. Also, in such a time like this, we believe that it is very important for us to check our spiritual life and look into our heart, whether truly I am inside the ark or I am not inside the ark. Because no matter how you are, as long as you are inside of the ark, then you can be protected. As we are in Jesus, we can be protected. Though there may be calamities, though there may be judgments, but those calamities and judgments cannot penetrate into Noah's ark and even destroy those people who are inside the ark. In the same way, if we are clearly and accurately inside of Jesus, then in such a time like this, we believe that ark, which is Jesus, Jesus is going to protect us and keep us safe as well. So I hope this lesson can be a great time where you can look into your heart and check your spiritual life and check your salvation, whether you are inside of the ark or whether you're the one who is outside of the ark as well. Once again, it is my great pleasure and honor to share these words together with all of you. Today, I would like to share the word from the book of John, chapter 8, starting from verse 1. Starting from verse 1 to 11, I'll read. John chapter 8, verse 1. But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Now early in the morning, he came again into the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, and they said to him, Teacher, and this woman was caught in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what do you say? This they said, testing him, and that they might have something of which to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, as though he did not hear. So when they continued asking him, he raised himself up and said to him, He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Then those who heard it, and being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, and beginning with the oldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you? She said, No one, Lord. And Jesus said to her, Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. I read up to verse 11. And when you look in this story, right now, the Pharisees and the scribes and the people in the village, and they caught this woman in the adultery. She was caught in the very act of adultery. So she couldn't say, No, I didn't commit adultery. I didn't commit sin. She couldn't say that because she was caught in the very act of committing adultery. However, God has given the children of Israel the law so that they may be guided by the law. However, there is a clear purpose of the law, which I am going to speak about later on. But everyone, why do you think God, He has given us the law? Many people think that, God, He has given us the law so that we may keep the law, so that we may follow the law, and so that we can, our life can be organized. But then, when you look at it, God has given us this law, knowing that we are going to break this law. He knows that we are going to commit adultery. That's why God said, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." If we are not going to commit adultery, then there is no point of God telling us, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." Thou shalt not steal. Why do you think God has told us not to steal? He knew that we are going to steal. That's why He told us not to steal. Thou shalt not murder. Why did God say that thou shalt not murder? Because He knew that we are going to murder, we are going to hate other people, we are going to fight with other people. That's why God said, "Thou shalt not murder." If we are the people who are not going to murder, who are not going to commit adultery, who are not going to steal, then there's no reason why God, He would give us this kind of law telling us not to do it. Everyone, right now, I am living in Kenya as a missionary. In most of the part of the country, and the speed limit on the highway, though you may say highway, it's not a big highway that you are thinking like in America, but it is maybe like a 2-lane road or maximum 4-lane road highway. But speed limit, most of those places, it's 80 kilometers per hour. Yes, I don't know what about America. It's about maybe 110 or 120. But in Kenya, it is 80 kilometers per hour. And recently, they made a big highway. They call it a super highway. The name of that highway is called the Thika Highway. On the Thika Highway, now the speed limit is 100 kilometers per hour. Everyone, if we do not have the car that can go beyond 100 kilometers per hour, then what is the point of the government putting a speed limit, the law telling us do not go beyond 100 kilometers and forth? There's no reason, right? The reason why government has implied the law saying that speed limit of this highway is 80 kilometers, 100 kilometers, is because our vehicles has the capability of well exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. Let's say that our car is so old and all of our cars, our engines cannot go beyond 50 kilometers per hour. Then would there be a need of a law telling us don't go beyond 100 kilometers per hour? No, you don't need that law. Why? Because your car cannot even reach up to 100 kilometers per hour. The reason why there is a law telling you not to go beyond 100 kilometers per hour is because our cars are able to go beyond 100 kilometers per hour. And there are many people who goes beyond 100 kilometers per hour. That's why there is a law telling us don't go beyond 100 kilometers per hour. There's that law. Why? Because we are able to go beyond it. In the same way, the reason why God has given us the law is because it is, in other words, God is telling you that you're more than able to commit adultery. You're more than able to steal. You're more than able to murder. That's why you need this law. You need to be controlled. That's why you need God. That's why you need Jesus in your life. However, many people do not clearly understand about this. That's why when God is telling them, do not commit adultery, they're just trying hard not to commit adultery. But God has given us this law knowing that we are the people who cannot help but commit adultery. Everyone, what did the Bible say? The Bible says, you look at a woman and you lust after her, then you have already committed adultery with her in your heart. When you look at a woman, and then you have a lustful heart towards her, then in the eyes of God, you have already broken this law. You have already committed adultery with her in your heart. Everyone, that is the standard of God of keeping these commandments and this law. Everyone, according to the standard of God, is there anyone who can keep this law? Everyone, there is no one who can keep this law according to the standard of God. But not knowing the standard of God, being ignorant of the standard of God, many people think, oh, I have kept the commandment of God because I didn't commit adultery. But everyone, open your eyes and look at the Bible. What is the standard of God? You look at a woman and you lust after her, then you have already committed adultery with her in his heart. So, which means, according to the standard of God, there is no one who has kept the seventh law that God has given us. There is no one who did not commit adultery. But because they don't know the word of God, they don't know the standard of God of this law, that's why, because they didn't commit adultery, they all act like, oh, I didn't commit adultery. But what about you? In your heart, you did not commit adultery? Everyone, if we stand before God, we are the people who are not different from this woman who was caught in the act of adultery. Everyone, she knew this law. She knew the law, the seventh commandment of God, telling them, thou shalt not commit adultery. Do you think she also wanted to commit adultery? Everyone, when you commit sin, at first, you enjoy sin. However, as time passes by, you fall into fear, and now you really want to come out of this sin, but you find yourself, you're already indulged into the sin, and you cannot come out of it. Likewise, many people who have fallen into drugs and alcohol, they thought in the beginning, when they first try it, they thought that they can come out of it easily. If I decide my heart anytime, if I want to quit alcohol, if I want to quit drug, I can come out of it. But everyone, are they able to come out of it? For me, I don't do drugs, I don't do alcohol, I don't smoke. Why? I know one thing for sure. Though I may be a pastor, but even me, if I try once, then I cannot come out of it. Because I know that I cannot come out of it, I don't even dare to try. One time, I went to this city called Mombasa. In Kenya, Mombasa is like Florida. It is, there's a sea, there's a beach, and it's such a beautiful city. And there's so many for you to enjoy. I went there riding on the bus, and as soon as I got off, I saw, people selling some leaves. So I didn't know what it was. And so I asked one of my colleagues, hey, what is this leaf? And he told me, this thing is called mira. I don't know in America whether you have this type of a drug called mira. It is not like marijuana. I think it is more common than marijuana in Kenya or in Africa countries. And so he didn't tell me that it was a drug. He said, so I asked, why are people selling this mira on the streets at the bus station? And they said, usually bus drivers, truck drivers, they chew mira a lot because when you chew mira, and then it keeps you stay awake. So I thought, wow, this is so good. I needed something like this because, I am very, I love sleeping. So even reading the Bible, I fall asleep. As I pray and I find myself sleeping. And I really want to keep myself awake. So sometimes to keep myself awake, I would drink coffee like 3, 4, 5, cups of coffee. But, coffee, drinking a lot is not good. So I was thinking, maybe I can take mira. And then he said, Pastor, you cannot take mira. You should not take mira. Why? I don't want to fall asleep. You told me that if I chew mira, then I can easily come out of sleep. I want to buy this. How much is this? And then he said, Pastor, no, this is not good for you. This is considered as a drug in Kenya. Oh, really? It's a drug? And so all of a sudden I was able to draw a clear line in my heart. I'm not taking that thing. Why? Because I know if I try even once, I know that I can fall into it and I cannot come out of it easily, or I won't be able to come out of it forever. So I said, no, I'm not taking that thing. Everyone, many people, they know that committing adultery is sin. This is a woman who was caught in the act of adultery. She also knew that committing adultery is against the law, and that if she is caught, then she can also be stoned to death. She knew that she could die. But why did she fall into committing adultery? At first, she said, oh, I am not going to commit adultery anymore. But she found herself going to a dark place and committing adultery again. And then, after committing adultery, she regretted, why did I commit adultery? I won't commit adultery again. So she thought that she drew a line, but she found herself committing adultery again and then again and then again. Everyone, why is it like that? Have you also experienced something like that? It may not be adultery, but you have some kind of evil heart that comes inside of you. And you know that evil thought and evil heart is bad, so you want to come out of those evil thoughts. Let's say that you hate somebody. You hate your family, you hate your friends, and you thought, this is sin before God. This is evil before God to hate my families, to hate my friends. I want to come out of it. I don't want to hate people anymore. But what happens, everyone? You find yourself also falling into hatred again and then again and then again. Not only that, you have the lustful thoughts arise in you. And then you think, I am not going to have this lustful thought in me again. I am going to throw away this thought. I am going to read the Bible so that I will never think about that lust ever again. But what happens? That lustful thought comes inside of you again and again and again. And you want to come out of it, but you don't know how to come out of it. It's like a whirlpool. When you fall into whirlpool, then you continuously come inside the whirlpool and eventually you lose your strength and you drown in the water and you die. No matter how hard you want to swim out of the whirlpool, unless someone comes to you to save you and rescue, it's not easy for you to come out of the whirlpool. Everyone, our heart is like that as well. We want to come out of this evil heart, but the more we want to come out of this evil heart, we find ourselves falling into evil heart again and again and again. Everyone, this woman who was caught in the act of adultery was also in that way. I won't commit adultery anymore. I will not commit adultery anymore. From now on, I will believe in God. From now on, I'll pray to God. From now on, I'll try to read the Bible diligently so that I can come out of this lustful heart and from this act of committing adultery. She knew that she's going to die. But something was continuously dragging her life and her heart to go and commit adultery. Why is it like that? It's not only for her. Now her story is also describing our heart. Everyone, you may have not, I don't know, maybe you did, but you may have not committed adultery in action, but you probably have committed oftentimes an adultery in your heart. You find yourself, your heart continuously falling into sin. Oftentimes you probably would also want to come out of it, but you find yourself being dragged into sin as well. Actually, I grew up in Los Angeles, and also I lived in Washington, D.C., actually Northern Virginia, and I also lived in New York, Queens. But when I was in school, in high school, in university, I used to cause a lot of trouble and a lot of problem. So actually, I tried hard in my heart so that I will never fall into sin again. But I found myself already committing sin. I regretted after committing sin all the time. I will never do this again. Because my father was a missionary in America. So I thought about my father's church brothers and sisters. My father is a missionary, he's a pastor, but son is always going around and committing sin. It doesn't look good, right? At least for the sake of my father, I wanted to be a good boy. In America, you call pastors' kids PK, right? When I came to Kenya, I realized that there's a gum called the PK. And so in America, they call people like me PKs, pastors' kids. As a PK, I wanted to be a good boy. I wanted to be, having a good spiritual life. I wanted to be a good role model in the church. So in the church, I would clean the church. I would do many works in the church. But when I go to school, as I hang around with my friends, I always found myself getting into trouble and into problems. I couldn't understand why. So I wanted to come out of it, so I try hard. I will never meet with my friends anymore. Every time I meet with my friends, I fall into sin and I fall into evil things. So I will never meet with my friends. But when I open my eyes, I find myself being together with my friends. So it was really difficult for me to come out of this kind of evil heart. I believe that also this woman who was caught in the act of adultery, she was also probably having the same heart. When she is committing adultery, she was probably enjoying herself. But after committing adultery, she regretted so much. I was almost caught today. I decided not to commit adultery, but why did I commit adultery today? How can I, come out of this life of committing adultery? No matter how much she would try hard, she found herself getting into committing sin and committing adultery deeper and deeper and deeper. I clearly understand her heart because my heart was also like that as well. But as I look in the Bible, I was able to clearly see why she could not come out of that simple life until she was caught in the very act. She thought that it was herself who went to commit adultery. She thought that it was her mistake. It was herself who committed adultery. That's why she tried hard by herself to not to commit adultery, but she could not help but continue to live that life of committing adultery. But now, through the Bible, we can clearly see that it is not this woman, it is Satan. That's why no matter how many times that she would have decided hard to come out of it, she cannot come out of it. Why? It was Satan who was dragging her life and dragging her heart, controlling her heart. I also realized through that word, the reason why I also wanted to live a good life, but I could not come out of it, come out of evil life, come out of sinful life, because of this reason. That's what I was able to realize. Everyone, are you into drugs right now? Everyone, are you into alcohol? Not only those kind of things. Maybe, are you in depression? Are you in sadness? Are you in hatred? Are you in a lustful heart? Everyone, the reason why you are indulged into this world of darkness is not because of yourself. Let us read from the book of Romans chapter 7, verse 20. You hold on to this, Romans chapter 7. It clearly teaches us why we fall into those kind of evil things, and no matter how many times that we decide our heart to come out of it, we can clearly see that we cannot come out of it. There is a reason why. Romans chapter 7, verse 20. Now, if I do what I will not do, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me. Everyone, the Bible clearly tells us it is no longer I who do it, but sin dwells in me. Why? Why that we cannot come out of it? Because it is sin which is dwelling inside of me, is dragging me and is leading my life. Everyone, let us read from verse 14. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. Everyone, we are the people who are already sold under sin. We are sold under sin. Since when were we sold under sin? Since Adam and Eve, we were already sold to Satan and sold under sin. Ever since that time, we were dwelling in sin. Ever since that time, sin came inside of me and sin began to drag our life. Let us read 15. For what I am doing, I do not understand. For what I will to do, and that I do not practice. But what I hate, that I do. If then I do what I will not do, I agree with the law that it is good. But now it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, nothing good dwells. For the will is present with me, but how to perform is good, I do not find. And for the good and that I will to do, I do not do. But the evil I will not to do, and that I practice. Now if I do what I will not to do, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me. Everyone wants to do good. Verse 19, for the good that I will to do, I do not do. But the evil I will not to do, that I practice. Everyone, all of you, you want to do good, right? You want to be a good person, right? You want to do only good, right? You don't want to do evil. You don't want to commit sin. But what happens, everyone? You find yourself in sin. You find yourself committing sin. You find yourself captured by this hatred inside of your heart. You find yourself captured by the lustful heart inside of you. She found herself also continuously committing adultery. She knew that she could die if she was caught in the act of adultery. But she found herself continuously committing adultery. Everyone, who is it? Is this woman who was doing it? No. It says, for the good that I will to do, I do not do. But the evil I will not to do. Everyone, she also did not want to commit adultery. She was also probably sick and tired of committing adultery. I don't want to commit adultery. Why am I find myself committing adultery? My heart was like that, so I also clearly understand her heart. I also want to live a good life as a PK. I also wanted to be a good role model in front of other people in the church as well. I didn't want to also fall into sin. I didn't want to fall into trouble as well. But I turned around, the problem was already caused. I turned around, the problem already happened. I couldn't understand myself why I am doing it like this. I believe that also her heart was also the same as well. She knew that she's going to die. But no matter how many times that she wanted to come out of that whirlpool of a lustful heart, no matter how many times that she wanted to come out of that whirlpool of a sinful life, she could not come out of it. Why? Because she was sold under the sin. She was captured by sin. Since when? Since Adam and Eve. Since Adam and Eve, all of us, all the human beings, we were born sold under sin and under the sin, under the realm of sin, under the rule of sin. That's why many people, they think, if I decide my heart, then I can live my life according to how I decide my heart. No, we are sold under sin, which means that there's a master. Who is the master? The master is Satan. That's why we cannot help but move according to how Satan leads us and guides us and controls us. Let us open one verse as you hold on to also Romans chapter 8. Let us open to the book of Psalms chapter 51. Psalms chapter 51, verse 5. It says, behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. Here it says, behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. Ever since we were conceived in the mother's womb, we were already conceived in sin. We were already conceived in the mother's womb, being sold under sin. Which means we are now being led and being controlled by sin, by Satan. That's why although I don't want to commit adultery, now sin, who is the master of our heart, is dragging her life to go and commit adultery. That's why she cannot help but live the life of committing adultery as well. Is it only for her? Is it only for her? It's not only for her. It was for even all of us and all these people who brought this woman in front of Jesus as well. But this woman had accurately realized, no matter how many times how I try hard to come out of this adultery, this lustful heart, I cannot come out of it. I've tried it so many times to come out of it, but I couldn't come out of it. She had accurately realized that by herself she cannot come out of this lust and adultery. But what about other people? Other people also live the same life of committing sin in their hearts and also in their life as well. But they were not caught, but that's why they thought that they are different from this woman. When Jesus said, those without sin among you, throw a stone at her first. Those without sin among you, out of you, those people who doesn't have any sin, you can throw a stone at her first. In John chapter 8, verse 7. So when they continued asking him, Jesus, right? He raised himself up and said to them, he who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. Everyone, was there anyone who was able to throw a stone at her first? There was no one. What happened to them? Verse 9. Then those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. Everyone, what happened? They were convicted by their conscience. Everyone, why were they convicted by their conscience? If they did not have any sin in their heart, then there is also no reason why they should be convicted by their conscience. Is that right? But why were they convicted by their conscience? Those without sin, who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. Who is without sin among you? Let him throw a stone at her first. If you don't have any sin, you throw a stone at her first. But there was no one who was able to do that. By that word, they were convicted by their conscience and went out one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. Why did they go away? Why did they went out one by one, beginning with the oldest? Because they were all convicted by their conscience. Which in other words, in another hands, it means it was not only this woman who was caught in the act of adultery has sin in her heart, but even these people who brought this woman to Jesus, they were also having sin inside of their heart as well. They were living the sinful life in their heart. It's just that the difference between that woman and these people is that this woman, she was caught. But these people, they were not caught. That was the only difference. However, these people, they realized that, I am also a sinner like this woman. I cannot throw a stone at her. They also realized that they are a sinner. Also, this woman, she also tried hard in her life so that she may not commit adultery, but she could not come out of it because she was sold under sin. She was born in iniquity. She was born in sin. So her master was Satan. That's why Satan was dragging her heart to go and commit adultery. That's why no matter how many times that she would make up her heart, she would decide her heart not to commit adultery, she could not help but commit adultery and fall into sin. Everyone, we are like that in our hearts as well. No matter how many times we would try ourselves and our heart not to commit adultery, not to think about the lustful thing, not to hate other people, everyone, we cannot help but fall into sin. Why? Not because our dedication and our decision is weak, because we are sold under sin. What did the book of Romans say once again? Verse 19. For the good that I will to do, I do not do. But the evil I will not to do. No one wants to commit evil. No one wants to do evil in their life. No one wants to live a life of committing adultery, committing sin in their life. We know that that is evil. She knew that she is going to be stoned to death. But it says, the evil I will not to do, that I practice. Now, if I do what I will not to do, it is no longer I who do it. It is no longer I who do it. It's not I who is doing it. But what? Sin that dwells in me. Everyone, who is the one that is doing it? It is the sin that dwells inside of me that is dragging my heart to commit adultery as well. Everyone, she really wanted to come out of this sin. She really wanted to come out of this sinful life. Why? Because she knew that if she is caught committing adultery, then she knew that she is going to be stoned to death. But no matter how many times that she wanted to come out of it, she could not come out of it. Everyone, right now this story is describing our heart. Describing how our heart is. Describing the condition and the state of our heart. Everyone, it may not be an adultery. It may not be a long heart. Everyone, maybe some of you, you might be hating somebody for a long period of time. Somebody, you might have lived with envy in your heart for a long time. Some of you, you might have lived with the worldly desires inside of your heart for a long time. Some of you, you might have lived with a lustful heart in you for a long time. And every time when such kind of a heart comes inside of you, when you imagine those things, now you could be enjoying it. But after you come out of that enjoyment of enjoying that thought inside of you, now you decide your heart, I don't want to go back to that kind of thoughts anymore. I don't want to go back to that kind of heart anymore. And you might want to come out of it. But what happens? Can you come out of it? A few days later, you find yourself in that evil heart again and again and again. Everyone, you can probably find yourself like this woman, not being able to come out of it. Now, these people, Pharisees, scribes, and these people, they dragged this woman. And let us open to John chapter 8 one more time, starting from verse 3. Then the scribes and Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said to him, Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. What do you say? Everyone, they brought this woman to Jesus. Why do you think these Pharisees and scribes and these people around have brought this woman who was caught in the act of adultery to Jesus? They brought this woman to Jesus because they wanted to test Jesus. They wanted to see what Jesus is going to say. In verse 6, This they said, testing him, and they might have something of which to accuse Jesus, accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, as though he did not hear. Everyone, they brought Jesus to test him. Because Jesus is saying that I am the Son of God. So they wanted to have some kind of evidence to accuse him. That's why they brought this woman to Jesus. And they said, according to the law of Moses, God has said to stone her to death if she was caught in adultery, if somebody commits adultery. But Jesus, what do you say? Now, to Pharisees and scribes and the people who brought this woman, they had only two answers. If, Jesus says, stone her according to the law of Moses, then they wanted to accuse Jesus, saying, you said that you're the Son of God. You said that you are the love. But how can you tell us to stone at her and kill her? You are not the Son of God. You have been lying until now. That's how they wanted to accuse Jesus. But on the other hand, if Jesus says, do not throw a stone at her, then they wanted to accuse Jesus by saying, you said that you are the Son of God. This law comes from God through Moses, and you are the one who is telling us not to throw a stone at her. You're the one who is telling us to break the law. You are not the Son of God. They wanted to accuse Jesus in that way. Everyone, whenever we face the trouble, whenever we face the problems, we only have two answers. Whether it is yes, whether it is no. However, to Jesus, he always has the third answer. He always has the fourth answer. He always has the fifth answers. Everyone, to us human beings, we are confined by the limitations of the answer of one or two. But to Jesus, he has unlimited answer to us. Jesus, what do you say? If you tell us to throw a stone at her, then we have something to which to accuse you. If you tell us not to throw a stone at her, then we can also accuse you as well. But what did Jesus say? And Jesus said, he who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her. He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her. Everyone, this is the answer which these people who brought this woman was never able to think about. Jesus all of a sudden came with the third answer. So they were all surprised and they didn't know what to do. And now Jesus hearing them saying, what do you say? Now Jesus didn't say anything, but Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, and as though he did not hear. What did Jesus do? Jesus, he stooped down on the ground and wrote something on the ground with his finger. Everyone, if you look into the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 9, it clearly tells us what he wrote with his finger. Everyone, this Bible is like a puzzle. So you cannot just purely understand the Bible just itself. If you connect the Bible to the Bible itself, and then you can have a better understanding and the meaning of this Bible. So right now, Jesus, he stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger. Right now, chapter 8 doesn't clearly explain what he wrote on the ground with his finger. But if you look at Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 10. Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 10. It says, then the Lord delivered to me 2 tablets of stone written with the finger of God, and on them were all the words which the Lord has spoken to you on the mountain from the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. Here it says, then the Lord delivered to me 2 tablets of stone written with the finger of God. Right now, they're talking about the 2 tablets of stone. Everyone, what is the 2 tablets of stone? Everyone, 2 tablets of stone is the 10 commandments, where God, he wrote on the 2 tablets of stone with his finger the 10 commandments. So right now here, when we come back to John chapter 8, we can know that he stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger. Also here, Deuteronomy, God, he wrote it with his finger. Right now here, John chapter 8 verse 8, he stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, as though he did not hear. So what did he write on the ground with his finger? With his finger, he wrote the 10 commandments. He didn't say anything. He didn't reply to what these people are saying. Jesus, what do you say? He quietly just stood on the ground, and just wrote on the ground with his finger the 10 commandments. Everyone, they were all surprised. Because if they came to Jesus, they thought that Jesus would say, okay, do this or do that. They thought that Jesus is going to reply them in that way, but Jesus did not reply them in that way. Jesus quietly just stood on the ground and just stood on the ground and wrote something on the ground with his finger. So they were all wondering, what is he doing? What is he doing? What is he writing on the ground? And they all gathered together around Jesus and began to see what Jesus is writing on the ground. And they found that Jesus, he was writing the 10 commandments on the ground. Why is Jesus writing the 10 commandments on the ground? Right now, the Bible says 10 commandments. Number 5, it says, honor your father and your mother. And you shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. And you shall not. As they look onto these laws, they were thinking, why is he writing that law on the ground? Did I myself keep that law? The law says, honor your father and your mother. Did I honor my father and my mother? Right. There was a time that I have broken that law. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Yeah, also in my heart. There was a time that I have also committed adultery also in my heart. And thou shalt not murder. Although physically I did not murder, I am also a person who have murdered my friends in my heart. Thou shalt not steal. Yeah, that's right. I have also stolen something from my father's pocket and my mother's pocket. I remember the time. Everyone, they thought that this woman and themselves, they have nothing to do with it. But they realized one by one. They began to reflect their heart from the law that Jesus, he was writing on the ground. What did they realize from the ground? Many people think that the purpose of the law, why God has given us the law, is because for us to keep the law, for us to do the law. However, what the Bible is telling us is something else. Let us open to the book of Romans chapter 3. Romans chapter 3. Romans chapter 3, verse 20. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight. For by the law is the knowledge of sin. Everyone, many people, they try to keep the law. They try to do good according to the law. Why? Because they want to be righteous and they want to go to heaven by keeping the law. But what did the Bible say? Therefore, by the deeds of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight. By the deeds of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight. For by the law, what is the purpose of the law? Everyone, the purpose of the law is the knowledge of sin. For by the law is the knowledge of sin. Everyone, the law is not to give the order in the world. The purpose of the law is not to lead you and guide you so that you might live a clean and good life. The purpose of the law is for you to accurately realize, for you to reflect your heart from the law so that you may accurately realize how evil and dirty, wicked sinner that you are. Why? So that you may accurately meet with Jesus. Everyone, Jesus, he did not come to this earth for the righteous. Everyone, Jesus, he came to this earth for the sinners. But many people, they think they need to do something good so that they can meet with Jesus. No, in order for you to accurately meet with Jesus, you need to accurately realize how evil and dirty and wicked sinner that you are so that you can meet with Jesus. Everyone, who goes to see the doctor? The one who accurately realizes that I am a sick person. Right now I am sick. I cannot help myself to be cured from this sickness. The one who accurately realized that I am sick, I am a sick person, I'm a patient, they're the one who can go to the doctor to see the doctor, to meet with the doctor. Although you have the virus inside of you, although you have the sickness inside of you, if you don't realize that you are a patient, if you don't realize that you are a sick person, then would you go see the doctor? Just because you have the virus, just for the fact that you are a sick person, it does not mean that you will go and see the doctor. You have to accurately realize that you are a sick person and that I cannot cure myself. Then you will go and see the doctor. In the same way, God has given us the law for the purpose of realizing my true image, how sinful and evil person that I am. Even this woman who was caught in the act of adultery, she was able to come to Jesus. Why? Because she accurately realized that she is a sinner. Even in order for us to accurately come to Jesus, it is not that we need to try hard to keep the law. It is not that we have to work hard to keep the law. Through the law, we need to accurately realize how evil and dirty person that I am. When you accurately realize that you are a sinner, when you accurately realize that you are a dirty and evil person, then you will come and stand before Jesus. Everyone, all of these people, they were all wondering, what is Jesus doing right now? What is he doing right now? Why is Jesus just keeping quiet and just sitting down on the ground and writing something with his finger on the ground? What is he writing on the ground? And one by one, they began to all come around Jesus and began to read what Jesus he was writing on the ground. And they realized that Jesus, he was writing the 10 Commandments on the ground. Why is he writing the law on the ground? Why is he writing these commandments on the ground? They were thinking, they were reading it, and as they were reading it, they were able to reflect themselves. And they were able to look into their heart. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. As they were reading this kind of law and reading it down, they were able to see themselves. I am also a sinner. I have also committed adultery. I have also stolen also before. I did not commit murder physically, but I have also murdered in my heart. They were able to also see how they are also an evil, dirty sinner that they are. That's why when Jesus said, and those among you, those who doesn't have any sin, throw a stone at her first. When they look into their heart before the law, there was no one who was able to throw a stone at her first. Everyone before the law, they had all realized accurately how they are evil and dirty sinner that they are. There was no one who was able to throw a stone at her first to this woman who was caught in the act of adultery. What does that mean? It means they realize that they are also evil, dirty sinner like this woman. Everyone, next session, I would like to deeply now go into and explain about the law. What is the purpose of the law? Why God gave us the law? If he knew that we cannot keep this law, then why did he give us this law? Now I would like to talk about that. And now accurately realizing that I am a sinner before this law, then how was this woman able to be saved from her sins? And in the same way, how we can also be saved from this sin as well. That's what I would like to talk about as well. I hope all of you can tune in to the next session so that you can clearly know and hear about why then God has given us the law and how we can come out of this sin as well. Thank you very much and hope to see you in the next session.
Kwenye extravaganza Sauti soli na diary ya kumechanja